Welcome. This is Power Trading Radio Live, fueled by Online Trading Academy. For more information, visit powertradingradio.com. Now, here's your host, Merlin Rothfeld.
Hey, welcome to Power Trading Radio. This is John O'Donnell. He's sitting in for Merlin. As you can see, Merlin is not here today. He's taking a day off for some personal reasons, but he will be back tomorrow. And I'm going to be, although he was my guest yesterday, I'm going to be his guest tomorrow. So, but today we're going to have a special event. It's almost a reunion of sort. This guest has been on Power Trading Radio many, many times with Merlin, and he's always been very, very popular with our community of users, and especially popular with our students where he teaches in the Online Trading Academy community. We're going to talk today with Michael Young. Some of you probably are aware, Michael started his career in 1980. He began trading on the floor of the CBOE as an independent floor trader, both making markets and becoming an expert in hedging risk. He has a long, storied career in trading both equities, options, and futures. Michael, welcome to our show.
Hey, John. So glad to be here. How you doing?
Well, as I was walking to the studio, I had a flashback memory, Michael, that I have to share with you. And I've never shared this story with Merlin. I've never shared this story on our radio show. I don't even know that I've ever shared it in any of my public talks. But I used to trade what were called spot options back before the Chicago Board of Options Exchange was created on about 1973. I don't know if you remember back to that day because you're a much younger man than I am. However, there was a day where options traded on commodities over the counter, and basically there was no public market to clear trades. Do you remember those days?
I'm sure if you remember back then, and I wasn't, I started running in 1975, but back then, the illiquidity of those things had to be enormous because, you're calling somebody, you really have no idea if the quote that you're getting is fair or not, and, we really had a huge disadvantage. Then the exchange comes along, and it took a while for people to catch on, but the fact is, finally you had transparency. So that's what I was lucky enough to step into.
Well, it was a crazy world. Back in those days, I owned a precious metals reclamation business where we recycled gold and silver from electronic waste. And I used to do some hedging. Mm-hmm. And a broker at, I think it was Beige, introduced me to these over-the-counter options. I think the markets were made. There were big spreads between bid and ask. And most of those options, I believe, were cleared in London on the London Metals Exchange. But there was no CBOE. And then when the Chicago Board of Options Exchange comes in, I made one of the biggest blunders of my life, Michael. As you know, I'm a bit of an outspoken libertarian, and when I heard that the Chicago Board of Options Exchange was going to regulate the trading of options, I came to a conclusion there was going to be no opportunity for me, and I just stopped. Yeah, right. I just stopped trading options completely, and that's probably the biggest blunder of my life because I could have had some wonderful experience under my belt. Who's to say? I could have ended up in Chicago. Who knows?
Well, what we all should have done back then was just buy a few memberships right when they came out, and they were very inexpensive. But that's a whole other story. I mean, my memories back then, I had this career on the floor, and I never had traded in my life. I didn't know what options were. But, you get down there, and you get that excitement into your blood, and you start seeing the opportunity, and you start just watching these guys that are good copying what they're doing, and a career came out of it. So I was one of the luckier people just by, wandering on that exchange for a summer job.
I remember there were a couple of firms that became quite popular. If one were to go back in financial history and look up their names, some of these names you might recall because some of them became quite notorious. There was a firm called Goldstein Samuelson that was a big writer of these options. And then another firm out of Beverly Hills called Puts and Calls, Inc. Both of them became very substantial in the retail space, pioneering, options, primarily agricultural options. Now that I think more about it, there were some options on sugar and corn and wheat, but mostly it was precious metals. And then there was a big tax shelter that came out of London, where one could participate in this over-the-counter options market that was unregulated, and there were brokers in the back room, creating fictitious accounts and fictitious trades and P&Ls with paper losses that could be.
Sounds like Wells Fargo.
Well, yeah, and then that, of course, ultimately blew up in everybody's face. But those were the days, right? Back in those days, those were the true Wild West days. And of course, what happened when the SIBO comes in? There's tremendous organization and regulatory clearing and capital requirements that really cleaned all that up.
It did, and what ended up really happening. I mean, the regulation was just to kind of, protect investors. I mean, you didn't have to worry about anybody defaulting. It gave you much more clarity. It's funny, in the very beginning, they did not even trade put options. It was call options only for, the first year or two. And, some really smart guys figured out that if you shorted stock against a call, you actually created a put. So there were some really smart people back then. And if you knew anything about options in the 70s and 80s when the public really was clueless, there was an enormous amount of money to be made as a market maker. And, as the years went on, I think the public got smarter. And when stock trading went to pennies in the 90s and the spreads all started dropping dramatically, it kind of shifted. The floor traders lost the edge, and the retail sector, if you knew what you were doing with options, all of a sudden retail traders got the edge. So, I think that's the world that we're living in now.
Well, what rekindled my interest in options, of course, is Click. Now that we are launching Click for core strategy, for strategic investor, for futures and options, I have started taking the options classes both online and setting in on various classroom experiences here in Irvine. And it's relit my energy and passion to be engaged. So I'm a proud demo trader. I'm a call writer above supply zones, and boy, am I having fun.
Well, I'll tell you, Click is very exciting. And when you look at the options space, I don't believe it's been released yet, but, what they're working on is this trade builder for options.
Yes.
So that will be a total game changer, because not only will Click help figure out, where credible supply and demand zones are, but when you type in, what the volatility is and just some key things, Click will actually recommend the type of option strategy that makes sense. So it's gonna take so much of the guesswork out for not only new traders but experienced option traders. I can't wait for this.
Well, as well, all this is going to be integrated within our core strategy of supply and demand to identify and score the supply and demand zones, and to actually come up with a credibility score for executing the trade.
Right, and there's never ever in history been a platform that would actually recommend that you don't take a trade. It's just unheard of. So, the ability for your actual platform to say the level is not good. Now, by good, we're talking about probability. You can't be consistent in this business without having some means of putting the probability on your side. And, this is something that trading platforms have never done before. I mean, they'll give you tons of tools and tons of indicators and, tell you when to buy and sell when a moving average line crosses over. But this is a game changer, totally.
Well, the vision for an online trading academy platform like this, although we're just getting to the point of rolling it out, basically goes back in conversations that AL and I had over 15, 17 years ago. That was always a vision because we always used other brokers' platforms. And, of course, the common denominator of all broker platforms is they are written from the perspective of the broker. And,
right.
and they're not
like
written this click platform.
Dollars.
And AL said, and I remember when we had these conversations years ago, decades ago, wouldn't it be great if we had our own platform that was written from day one, the perspective of the educator? And that's a different kind of platform experience, isn't it?
Right, it is, because it's still going to have all the bells and whistles that, maybe conventional platforms have, but these proprietary tools that actually walk you through the trade. Now, I mean, when you're taking a course or as a class and you're taught the 6-step process to find a zone and how you draw your lines, and then you have to grade the zone. I mean, that's what Click will help with. The algorithm will literally help advise whether or not to take the trade. And if it says to take the trade, it'll actually advise how to take it, exactly what kind of an entry to use, whether it's a stock or a future or Forex or whatever. So, I've been, certainly that I was a student at Online Trading Academy back in 2005. And, we were so excited with the whole product that OTA had that, I ended up with very close friends opening up the Chicago Center. And, I've really been on all sides of this, including teaching for the past 13 years. And it continues to just excite me where this company is going. So the markets, the opportunity out there, I mean, I wanted to talk to you because look at gold, look at oil. I mean, these markets, the dollar, this is your stuff. You must be frothing at the mouth right now.
Well, I am excited. I temper my enthusiasm with a little bit of fear of this Coronado, or what is it? The
virus.
The virus. That gives me a little pause of concern because
you got to just think of Corona beer. That's what it's called.
There you go. I had it on the tip of my tongue. But I want to go back to the days you came off the trading floor. I remember. I think you and I and Craig. I remember coming to Chicago. I remember doing the grand opening to the center that you and Craig and another individual opened up. What motive? You were coming off the floor, and of course, what motivated you to want to open up an online trading academy center in the Chicago marketplace?
Well, it's funny. When I left the floor, I thought trading on my own would be easy, and I went home and started trying to trade on a screen-based system, and realized that I had no skill for that. And Craig Weil, who was a very good friend of mine on the floor, I'm not sure if it was Craig who found Online Trading Academy first or myself, but I believe Craig just got on a plane and flew out to Irvine and took what was at the time the Pro Trader class, and he called me and said, "This is unbelievable. You have to do it." So I literally came out the next month and took it. And we were both looking for help in allowing us to transition from the floor to screen-based trading, but we just saw all these other people in the same situation we were. They were struggling. The floor was going away. We had never seen a place like this where you sat in a classroom and you had a computer and you had an instructor. Roger Best was my first teacher, and I was just blown away by his passion for having the students learn this. And I talked with Craig. We said we got to bring this to Chicago, and it was a process. We were kind of in a bidding war with another gentleman, and we finally ended up sitting down and partnering, and we brought it to Chicago. So it was a great thing for us. Me and Craig did a lot of the teaching. Our other partner did a lot of the day-to-day management. But from that day on, I've just been amazed by the growth and, just always behaving like we have competition when I've never seen any company that really does what we do.
Well, I'm asked that all the time. Who is your competition? And I used to say 15 years ago, well, my competition's a mouse click away. So my competition's always there. So we have to stay on our toes. We have to innovate. We have to differentiate our experience. And, there's some smart kids somewhere, trying to beat us up. And as Satchel Paige said, don't look back, somebody might be catching you. And, the most important thing, I say it a little bit differently now when somebody asks me that, who's your competition? I say, I think our real competition is complacency. I think our real competition is the individual that thinks they can watch a couple of YouTube videos, read a book, and, open up an account with a brokerage firm and start throwing some trades around.
And I got to tell you,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly
that's our
did.
competition, and that's just gross underestimation and respect for the amount of skill it takes to do this efficiently.
Well, I just want to make a comment about the books and the videos, because when I left the floor and when I was struggling for 3 years trying to figure it out, that's what I was defaulting to. I knew every chart formation ever created. I read all of those books. I went to seminars on how to use indicators. I was watching every video that I could, and it just became clear. I mean, there was a lot of education that was available, but for training, it's a very different thing. You have to literally be sitting down next to somebody who's great at the skill and have them show you how to do it. And this, to me, this is something that needs to have a lifetime participation, because markets change, and we're all human beings. We can get on a hot streak where we're following our rules and everything's great, and then we get a little bit sloppy, and all of a sudden you could really do damage to yourself. So the needs to be in a community where you have that constant support and the ability to network, I think that's one of the big deals that we've been able to accomplish.
Oh, I think community is paramount importance. When you and Craig joined our team back in the 2005 era, our curriculum was based on mostly traditional technical analysis studies, stochastics, MACDs, moving averages, Bollinger Bands, etc. But we really pivoted, and I want to give a lot of credit to Sam Seiden for being the genesis of our core strategy. You are now teaching our core strategy in the learning experiences that you host for Online Trading Academy. What was your feeling when the core strategy was first brought forward to replace the traditional technical analysis methodologies that we were immersed in before Sam joined our team?
Well, that's a real interesting question, because back in 2005, so I told you I had Roger for my instructor.
Right.
Now, I had read all the books. I knew all these indicators and how to use them, but what Roger did for me and what the curriculum did was it organized it in a fashion that really made sense. So, I mean, I was enjoying doing it the right way, but having been on the floor, there were really two main advantages we had as market makers in the trading pit. And I was in a pit with just hundreds of people. We could buy in the bid and sell on the offer, so that was certainly a big benefit. But we were standing right near the major brokers. And, when Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch or Dean Witter or any of these big guys down there, E.F. Hutton, when their brokers started screaming that they had big orders to buy or sell, we could literally play off of that and just kind of copy what they did. So when I left the floor, I think I was struggling because I didn't have that information anymore. When Sam Seiden came and brought core strategy, it was really bringing that advantage back. So, we're not watching people screaming and yelling anymore in the pit, but these supply and demand zones are basically where the broker would have been screaming or yelling. So it made perfect sense to me it was a much better methodology than technical, traditional analysis. So I think we do have something very unique, and it amazes me when I watch these markets go up and just turn on a dime when they hit quality supply, and the same thing at demand. And every trade obviously does not work. So, we have to be risk managers. We have to dynamically manage the risk whenever we get into a position. But you put that probability, low risk, and risk management together, and then I think you actually have a chance.
Well, I can imagine standing, I never stood at or near that floor with you. I did have the opportunity to visit the New York Stock Exchange and the New York Merc on a couple of times. But I can imagine you standing next to all that high-powered order flow, coming into that pit, that you would dynamically see all this heavy buying demand come into the marketplace by the Goldman Sachs representative as an example. And I could imagine you wanting to get on board that momentum and probably pushing the trade and adding to your size because of that information, that proprietary information that you had being in that same pit with that strong amount of demand. Was that the case? Was that at the edge?
Yeah. I mean, the markets would be falling hard in a given day, and all of a sudden, the broker who's standing right next to you starts screaming. They have a huge order to buy. So you're able right at that moment. I mean, you couldn't get in the way of what the broker was doing. They didn't like that stuff. But as soon as you bought something and then the momentum shifted, yeah, the ability to add to a winning position, and then when you see another major broker starting to sell, I mean, you didn't have to go for a long ride to make a lot of money in the options because of the leverage. You could have, bought, several 50 contracts, 100 contracts, 10 contracts, whatever, and in a very short amount of time, it could have been a very meaningful kind of a trade. So that kind of information it was hard to replace that advantage. And I think that's why floor traders in general did so well in that environment. And, when things started changing in the 90s, all of a sudden, a lot of us were just kind of left without a job. So
yeah.
thank God for Online Trading Academy.
When the edge went away, the revenue stream went away. I remember, I think it was either you or Craig. We were going. One of my favorite restaurants in Chicago is Harry Caray's. I'm a big Cardinal fan, and as a lot of people know, Harry Caray was originally an announcer with the Cardinals. So I love to go to Harry Caray's. And I think somebody mentioned that, look, let's go to Harry Caray's. There'll probably be a bunch of ex-floor traders there that are waiting tables. And that kind of shocked me, to hear that.
Well, John, there were people down there that just never thought it would end. So there were certainly people that were smart, and as they were making, they made investments or they put money aside. But there were other people that just made it and just spent it and just assumed it would always be there. And then when the markets changed, there were people in trouble. So, I mean, a lot of, I think, the message that I try to impart to my students is, the markets are great right now. It's been a great 11 years of pretty much straight up under this cheap interest rate policy and President Trump's economic policies. But we all know that will change, that will morph back into tons of volatility, and we're going to have a bear market, and we will have a steep correction. We need to make sure that we, that we have our nuts kind of buried when that happens. But on the other hand, there's a lot of opportunity on the downside. So I think people need to learn how to profit when markets fall, because that's where the options and the futures really, really play a big role.
Well, I think that's the other motivator that's got my attention to become more credible in trading options with Online Trading Academy and Click's help. And thank God I'm surrounded by all these great instructors here. And we are really blessed with an incredible faculty. And what a ride, what an experience this has been, over the last 2 decades. And I'm so grateful to just to be play a little part and be part of it, because it's Bill. This whole experience for me has been, and I would guess that it probably you might or Craig might want to make the same statement. I know Craig is really thrilled with the opportunity to teach. He's found a new passion, I believe, and I think you probably have too, with the support that Online Trading Academy gives us instructors. Why don't you share with our audience what's the day in the life of an OTA trading instructor like? When you get the call to go out and teach an experience in, Washington, D.C. Center, what's your day like?
Well, the preparation for it is I don't have to do a lot to prepare, only because I'm very familiar with kind of what I will do curriculum-wise, but I certainly am always on top of what the markets are doing, and depending on what the course is, I'm doing a lot of market timing events now where I'm really just trying to open people's eyes as to what active investing is and give them a peek at what their life might look like with it. And, obviously the way we approach it and our tools and things like that. So I just go incredibly excited. I mean, when I'm home, I'm a grandparent and I got a lot of things going on. I like to trade, but the way I trade, I'm not sitting in front of my computer all day. I look at the charts in the morning, I use my resources, and I place orders, and then I can go about my life. So when I'm in D.C., or actually next week, I'm going to be going to Westwood in L.A., and I'm just excited to get there. I'm excited to meet all the students that are going to be in the class, and I love it. It's like it's being on stage for me, but it's something that I have a true passion for, and if I can help people change their lives, that is one of the biggest reasons why I do it.
Well, it truly is and has been for so many of us a life transformational experience, and it's going to get better. Let me tell you the good news. The Eyal Shahar has some incredible plans for what this click experience is going to migrate to over the next few years, and it's going to be evolutionary in the trading education space, and I'm very confident it's just going to, and he always leans in the favor of what's best for the student. I'm sure you have observed that and felt that. There's just been no shortcuts here. This man is totally a leader in delivering the capabilities that we know our students need, and now we're going to, as I'm sure you're aware, we're digitizing our content and delivering it in multiple modalities, where you can take it in a classroom experience, you can take it live online, you can take it on demand, because the whole class is, we have learning labs that complement that. We're getting ready to launch a whole series of evening classes to serve that individual that can't take 3, 5, or 7 days off work. If you think about the adult education space, historically, it's dominated by night school. Every university that serves adult learners has some kind of a night school delivery. But we're gonna bundle it all together and deliver the content experience in the modality that the customer wants. And I just think that's just a tremendous advantage. And what I've learned in this experience, I don't know, I'd like to get your opinion on this, because everybody seems to want to learn in a different style and manner. I'm a very visual learner. I learn best in a highly dynamic visual world. But what we have found is that we can take the best practices of digital learning on demand and integrate it with the best practices of a classroom learning experience, which involves live trading and immersion. And there's no other better way to learn something than to actually do it in a safe immersion environment where you can, feel a little bit of the glory and get your tail kicked when you need to get your tail kicked. But I'd like to get your impression on the evolution that you have seen in Online Trading Academy's commitment to student success over the last 15 years that you've experienced firsthand.
Yeah, it's basically, I've seen the same thing. I think there are a lot of different ways that people learn. I'm just like you. I like listening and watching things. What I love now about the recordings of all the classes and the on-demand stuff, it's all self-paced. So, whatever stage of your life that you're in, whether you're retired and have a lot of time available or whether you're working and, it's hard to find the time, there is definitely a way. If this is something that's important enough to you, there's definitely a way to consume the education. And this on-demand stuff is unbelievable. I think that's literally just within the last 3-4 months. But it's just another way, anytime you need help, there's an incredible student support presence throughout the company, whether it's emailing an instructor or just sending in an email or whatever. But if you need one-on-one, face-to-face, that's available. But there's just so many things. So it's the self-paced part of it is what is good. But I think a lot of people, you can tend to get a little lazy in your lives. So hopefully what we're able to do as teachers and what these educational counselors are able to do is just help kind of, poke you in the butt, make sure that you are using your resources, because our goal is to make everybody, help everybody reach their goals.
Well, we've been talking today with Michael Young, a veteran instructor, veteran floor trader in the SIBO. Michael, I just want to tell you straight up in a public forum, I'm so happy that you're part of our community. I'm so happy that you're part of our team to take on this journey. And I just want you to know we're all going to work very, very hard to make it better for you and the environment in which you work in and for our students. And I'm convinced as the journey goes on, these markets are going to cooperate with us. And if and when we do get this big correction, everybody seems to be anticipating, I'm really confident that many of our students are going to get on the right side of this move, with the support from our faculty. I think in our XLT sessions and in our community events, this is an incredibly collaborative community helping one another. Our user base is just phenomenal when you think about where they have come from and what it's evolved to, over the last decade. So I want to thank you very much for being on today. Is your next assignment in Westwood?
Yeah, I'm actually leaving Thursday of this week. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday market timing event, and then later in the month I'm going to be in Minnesota. And I want to thank you, John. I think when I did meet you years ago, I recall at one point you kiddingly said, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And my friend, we are disproving that every day.
Well, I'm a living, walking example of that. Okay, thank you very much.
When I get back in Irvine, we'll
all right. Hey, look, stay warm there in Chicago. Be careful. I know it can get a little testy in February.
I know, but Harry Carays is still open, so get your butt out here.
I want to come out there. I certainly do. And you get your rear end to Orange County. We're not that far from Westwood,
I know. I'll see if I can get an Uber. I'll give you a call.
All right. See if you can. We'll go out and kill a chicken.
All right, John. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Best of luck with everything, and let's just do our job.
Thank you. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Michael Young. Boy, we go back a long way. 2005. My goodness. Tomorrow, I'm going to be Merlin's guest tomorrow. And then Saturday, I'm going to be in Westwood at 9:30 a.m. doing a power trading workshop. It's a free workshop. You are all invited. Why don't you come out, click that button there on the screen, or get a hold of the Online Trading Academy Westwood office. Book a seat. Come on out. Bring a friend with you. We'll probably have some refreshments there. We'll be there for 2 or 3 hours. And we're going to talk about these markets. We're going to talk about our core strategy. We'll even show you a little bit peek under the cover on what our new Click platform looks like. I'm John O'Donnell. I've enjoyed being with you today. Peace. I'm out of here.
You're listening to Power Trading Radio Live. Watch the show live or on the archive at powertradingradio.com and YouTube. Or download the podcast from iTunes or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.